in the Republic of Mirage, an original poem by Jeffery. They paint the house again, new coat, same cracked beams, declare it livable because the rot is now designer. They sell the dream with platinum teeth and plastic laurels, swearing the wound's been sutured since they've wrapped it in a flag. Progress is paraded, but only on screens. A single face in high office, and suddenly history is declared irrelevant, like rain never soaked the fields where our forebears bled. We are told, see how far you've come? As if the staircase they've built wasn't still on fire, as if naming a holiday undoes the lash. They rebrand the chains as merit, call the scaffold an opportunity, give us mirrors instead of medicine, reflection over remedy. They mistake a podium for parody, a seat at the table for a say in the menu. They serve justice lukewarm, then praise the patience of those still waiting to eat. But beneath their veneers, the old scripts hum, the same boots still crush, the same laws still linger like ghosts with badges. This is no arrival. This is an orchestrated illusion, a theater of inclusion where the curtain never truly rises. The lie is loud, but so are we. Not in thanks, but in reckoning, peeling back the myth with hands blistered from building what they swore was already ours. What's up? It is your boy, it is your cousin, it is your best friend here, Jeff, one of your co-hosts here, back at it again with another episode of the Visionaries Vault, a Black intellectual podcast. So once again, this is a podcast where we open up the archives, deconstruct the present, and dream louder than the limits they place on our futures. Well, that's at least the hope. So this week's episode is called The Myth of the Post-Racial Society. So how the United States perpetuates the illusion of racial progress along with Canada. So while my brother Christian will be breaking down how it plays out in Canada through the Canadian context, I'll be guiding us through the American side, past and present. You can't fix what you won't face. Let's start there with James Baldwin, because he always knew what America refused to admit, that this nation's soul is not sick. It was structured this way. From the Constitution's original silence on slavery to the Electoral College designed to preserve Southern white power, the United States was always born with a dual consciousness. Liberty for some, chains for many. I wouldn't even say others. So after 1865, right, emancipation didn't bring freedom. It brought Reconstruction, a brief attempt to reimagine a multiracial democracy. For about a decade, we saw Black senators like Hiram Revels, public schools open to formerly enslaved children, and in the Freedmen's Bureau distributing food and negotiating labor contracts. But the experiment ended with a deal, the Compromise of 1877. So Hayes gets the presidency and the federal troops withdraw from the South. In exchange, terror returns. So within years, the states passed Black codes to re-enslave people through labor contracts and vagrancy laws. The 13th Amendment's loophole, except as punishment for crime, became the legal justification for convict leasing. The state of Alabama literally leased Black bodies to railroads and plantations. Louisiana's Angola prison sits on a former slave plantation, and the labor model never changed. So we got Plessy v. Ferguson, 1896, made separate but equal legal. Lynchings were used to police ambition. Anti-literacy laws criminalized education. Black veterans returning from World War I and World War II were lynched for wearing their uniforms. When FDR passed the New Deal, Social Security excluded domestic and agricultural workers, who were 70% Black, right? Let's be clear. Policy wasn't just slow to include us, meaning Black folk, it was designed to exclude us. So redlining codified segregation. The Federal Housing Administration, FHA, refused to insure Black mortgages, literally drawing red lines around Black neighborhoods and labeling them hazardous. White families got subsidized loans, Black families got boxed in, dispossessed, and over policed. And when we built something for ourselves, like Tulsa's Greenwood District or Rosewood, right, in Florida, white mobs destroyed them. Not out of fear, but out of resentment that Black success existed without their permission. Fast forward, we have Brown v. Board of Education, 1954. Said segregation was unconstitutional. But by 1957, Little Rock students had to be escorted by the National Guard. So desegregation was met with violence, stall tactics, and mass white flight. In Boston in the 1970s, white residents rioted over busing. Even the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and 1965 came not just from grassroots bravery, but because America was embarrassed on the world stage. It was geopolitics, right? Not morality, that finally forced the hand. But each moment of Black visibility has been followed by a white political backlash or a white lash. So Nixon's Southern strategy reframed racism as states' rights. Reagan's welfare queen that I mentioned in our previous episode, right? This welfare queen myth criminalized Black poverty. And even Clinton's 1994 crime bill and three strikes rules and laws militarized policing and expanded mass incarceration and intensified mandatory minimums. And then Obama. They said we were post-racial, as if a Black man in the White House erased 4 centuries of legal apartheid. But Obama's presence became a provocation. Cue the Tea Party movement, right? Birtherism, Fox News hysteria, and a spike in white militia activity. We didn't move past racism. We just moved past the ability to deny that it was still foundational. But I'll end it there and I'll let my brother Christian pick up the Canadian side of things.
My name is Christian Banza, and I'm speaking to you from a place of reflection, resistance, and renewal, grounded in the reality of what it means to be Black. And I want to start by honoring those who came before us. People like Lincoln Alexander, Canada's first Black member of Parliament, first Black federal cabinet minister, and later the first Black lieutenant governor of Ontario. But Lincoln's greatness, it wasn't born in titles. It was forged in moments of quiet injustices. When Lincoln was a young man, he called about a room, and when he got there, the landlord saw his skin, and the door was slammed in his face. No explanation, no apology, just rejection. And he walked away humiliated, but not defeated. And that's my takeaway from his life, is his resiliency. He said to himself that day, "No one will ever tell me I don't belong again." And he kept that promise. He entered rooms were never built for Black voices, and he made sure we could never be excluded again. And his story reminds me that we're not just the beginning, we are the continuation. And to truly understand where we are today, we have to be honest about where we've been, because racism in Canada didn't just disappear, actually didn't even hide. And at one time, it marched openly in the streets in the form of the KKK. And in Saskatchewan alone, they had over 20,000 active members. They wore white hoods, carried burning crosses, held rallies across Regina, Moose Jaw, Edmonton, calling for a pure white Canada. And they didn't just target Black Canadians, they targeted Indigenous folks, Catholics, immigrants. And they weren't just extremists, they were teachers, politicians, preachers, police officers. So when we say that racism doesn't always wear a white hood, let's remember that here in Canada, it literally once did. Now, in 2025, of course, it wears different clothes. Now, typically they sit on hiring panels. It lingers in underfunded classrooms and spaces. The biased textbooks that we still use, algorithms, and of course the unspoken expectation. And this is why resistance matters. Resistance always has mattered. And in 1977, Canada introduced the Canadian Human Rights Act. This was a law that made it illegal to discriminate based on race, ethnicity, or religion in any federally regulated space. It was a response of years of Black organizing and public pressure. It was built on the legacy of communities like Africville, where Black families in Halifax were displaced by the Canadian government, yet they continued to fight for their dignity and for reparations. It echoed in the demands of protests in the 1969 Sir George Williams student occupation in Montreal, where Black Canadians students took over a university computer lab to protest racial discrimination. And this was a turning point in Canadian history that most don't ever learn about. So I encourage everybody to learn about the Sir George Williams affair. And it rose from there to Hogan's Valley in Vancouver, where Black life thrived until, of course, it was wiped out by urban development, as they say. So I say that to say this. We've always resisted. We have always spoken up. We have always imagined something better. Yet here we are in 2025, still being told that we live in a post-racial Canada. Still being asked to prove that racism exists while carrying its weight every day. We live in a time where individualism is rewarded and capitalism masks inequality with opportunity. We're praised for making it out instead of resource to build where we are. But I believe in something deeper than self, something older. And it's a philosophy that I will forever talk about. I believe in Ubuntu, the African philosophy that says, I am because we are. And I look at Nelson Mandela, who lived Ubuntu, not as an idea or a philosophy, but it was his way of surviving, his way of leading, and his way of liberating. Ubuntu reminds me, I'm not strong unless you're strong. And humanity is not well while there is still hunger, poverty, greed, war, and apathy. And we live in a time where individual success is celebrated more than the health of the collective. But if people are starving, if communities are overlooked, if oppression persists in our classrooms, in courtrooms, in boardrooms, then our success is truly hollow. And Ubuntu reminds us that Black liberation is not a solo journey, it's a shared one. And we must walk, learn in it, and fight for it together.
So today in 2025, and let's be honest, this country's not in a post-racial era. It's in a pre-fascist one, right? Donald Trump is back in office. Affirmative action has been dismantled by the Supreme Court. DEI programs are vanishing as we speak. College curriculum are being whitewashed. Anti-CRT laws have criminalized Black intellectual thought in classrooms. But they say we still made progress. What they mean is we've learned how to dress oppression in different clothes. Because police still kill unarmed Black people at disproportionate rates. Prisons still function as modern day plantations. Black folk are 13% of the United States population, but nearly 40% of its incarcerated population. And that's not by happenstance, right? Qualified immunity still shields officers from accountability. Cash bail still criminalizes poverty. School funding is still based on property taxes, preserving generational inequality and equity. And voter suppression? It's digital now. Purging rolls, closing poll sites, gerrymandering Black and brown districts into political irrelevance, right? Even Democratic administrations have failed us. The George Floyd Justice and Policing Act never passed. Student loan forgiveness was stalled and diluted. Public housing remains neglected. And reparations? Still dismissed as divisive. They handed us Juneteenth as a federal holiday, but refused to defund the very police forces that make Black celebration dangerous. They posted Black squares on Instagram, but wouldn't remove Confederate statues. They gave us diversity panels, but they kept the power structure intact. This is what I call performative progress. The metrics change, but the material conditions stay the same. The Black maternal mortality rate has risen. The racial wealth gap remains frozen, and our kids, I see this firsthand as a Black male educator. Our kids, our Black and brown boys are still being tracked in schools, from special education rooms to detention centers. AI and tech are being weaponized to criminalize us more efficiently, right? We are not post-racial. We are post-accountability. And the liberal establishment has been complicit. Neoliberal multiculturalism allows institutions to tokenize us while gaslighting our demands. A Black VP doesn't undo the surveillance state. A Black CEO doesn't dismantle capitalism's anti-Black logic. In 2025, the myth is not just persistent, it's profitable, it's curated, it's marketed, and it's killing us.
And here we are. It's 2025, and we're still living in the aftermath of the myth. We've watched governments in this country defund anti-racism programs and quietly remove equity goals from public policy. In Ontario, Black-focused school initiatives are being reevaluated under the claim that race-based programs are divisive. In Saskatchewan, curriculum reforms continue to erase the contributions of Black and Indigenous people, while teachers are told, just stick to the basics. Reports come out, apologies are made, but nothing really ever changes. As Canada expands pathways for foreign workers, Black immigrants, especially from African and Caribbean nations, continue to face longer wait times, more rejections, and higher rates of surveillance and deportation. But we celebrate multiculturalism at festivals. But when it comes to housing, employment, and justice, access remains deeply unequal. Even in the corporate world, DEI roles created after the murder of George Floyd are being cut. Not because racism is solved, but because the moment is no longer trendy. And yet, Black Canadians are still underrepresented in leadership, overrepresented in low-wage jobs and prisons, and statistically more likely to live below the poverty line. And while Black educators, organizers are doing the work to push conversations forward, and I continue all to do that work, many are burning out, doing more with less, fighting for space in systems that say the right things and do the wrong ones. I mean, look at Caleb Schmidt, look at Samuel Uko. These are just microcosms of the society that we live in. This is what post-racial rhetoric does in 2025. It masks injustice. Communities are gaslit and silenced. Real conversations are silenced in favor of comfort over convenience. It silences real conversations in favor of comfort and convenience. So no, we're not beyond race. We're still in it. We're still naming it, still resisting it. And we gotta keep telling these stories, not just because they're painful, but because they're the only way forward. If we don't disrupt the myth, we end up reinforcing it. If we don't disrupt the myth, we end up reinforcing it. And that's not an option, not for me. It shouldn't be for you or our children or our future. And this episode and this podcast isn't just about the past. It's about 2025 and how we carry the legacies of those who came before us into the future that still needs building.
Sometimes the hardest truths are the ones hidden behind good intentions and empty symbols. But when we pull back the veil, when we name what's real, we make space for something deeper than illusion. We make space for healing and for change. So this is a journey, not a destination, and we're grateful you're here on this journey with us. So as a reminder, this is a bi-weekly podcast, so join us again on July 26th. And as always, keep the conversation going.